All right, hello everybody. Hi, my amazing students. Hope you're all doing well. If I'm in somebody's living room in the familia, hello familia. Anyway, so we are continuing. This is actually our last set of notes for Unit 5. We're coming to the conclusion, and this one is going to be about language. So pay very close attention because we are going to be having a hardness discussion, and a lot of it is going to come from these video notes, but as well as some articles and things that we're going to send out. I'll send out to you later on. Anyway, so let's start. So what I kind of did, I don't have a PowerPoint. I kind of wanted to show you guys what notes should look like, a little bit more organized in a sense. So I've figured I'll model it so you guys could see, as well as this is going to be an opportunity for you guys to fill in and kind of just write it down. So this will make sense as we go in order. So at the top of your notes, you'll put language notes. You're going to put video notes. And our first subtopic is going to be about language. So language is basically, and so you're going to want to write the word language and right under that, scoot it over a little bit, your first little bullet. And basically those little bullets are kind of like what you guys are going to be writing. So basically language is anything that is spoken. We're writing this down. Spoken, written, or signed words. Okay, so that's one. And then you're going to want to put like another bullet. See, this is why you're not moving it along. You're going to put another bullet, and I want you to put this is how we communicate with meaning. Okay, so language is either spoken, written, or signed. And then the next little bullet, you're also going to write, it's our way of communicating with meaning. So we basically combine those spoken words, written words, and signed words, combine them in order to communicate with one another. Okay, so that is language. Now, linguistic is basically the scientific study of language, and this is a great field if you're really interested in language. And as you're getting to know this, a lot of students have actually gone into speech and language pathology. It's a career, it's very rewarding, definitely one I actually wanted to go into. But let me move it along before you guys complain about these long videos. Okay, so anyway, so after linguistics, so this is basically the study of language. And I will say there's a lot of still research out there that they are still diving into language, and we'll talk a little bit more on that. So next subtopic is going to be the structure of language, okay? And you need to know the different parts that makes up language. And the first one, we're going to start with the smallest unit, which is what are called phonemes. And this is literally, writing this down, it is the smallest distinctive sound of unit in language. So it's the smallest distinctive sound, okay? And then this consists of vowels, consonants, as well as prefixes, and I'm sorry, not prefixes, but also letter combinations. Sorry, I was reading the next one. So these are basically where you have some examples would be like the letter S makes a S sound. So that is going to be your phoneme, which is S, right? But if I combine CH together, that makes ch, and that would be a phoneme as well. Okay, so it's not just one letter, it's basically letters that are combined that make a sound, but it is the smallest unit. Okay, make sure that you have that, and it's the smallest unit of sound. Okay, now morphemes, okay, are going to be the smallest unit that carries meaning. Okay, so this one for morphemes, it's still the smallest unit, but it's going to carry meaning. So this could be words as well as parts of words, such as prefixes and suffixes. So make sure to write that down. So it is the smallest unit that carries meaning, and this would be in words or parts such as prefixes and suffixes. So some examples of that would basically be like cat or or pretty, right? So these are just, you get your phonemes, you put them together to then create morphemes. But we could also have like would be also a morpheme because that like unhappy, right? The is one morpheme and happy is the second one. So like if they ask you how many morphemes are here, you would say two. Okay, and sometimes they do ask that. So the next one is going to be grammar. And grammar are basically, it is a system of rules that enables us to communicate with, so it's a system of rules that enables us to communicate with and allows us to understand each other. Okay, so these are just basically rules that we need to communicate with one another, and then it allows us to also make it make sense, right? So for this one, under grammar, there's this word called semantics. So semantics is basically, this is what gives meaning from the sounds. So semantics allows us to give meaning to the word. So it's basically like definitions for words. Like that, I know that unhappy means not happy, right? That would be the semantics. Now, syntax is the next one here, would be, for this definition, is going to be that it helps order words into sentences that make sense, right? So for syntax, it's basically telling you these are the rules that you need in order to order the words in sentences to make it make sense. For example, you all know that you need to have a subject and a predicate, right? Basic. You know you need to have a noun, you know you need to have, adjectives you're describing. So it's kind of like that there needs to be some set of rules when you're creating a sentence. You can't just say cat the hat, right? It has to be the cat in the hat type thing. Okay, so that is grammar. They're just basically rules, but in the grammar, there's semantics and then there's syntax. You need to know the difference. Then you have pragmatics. So pragmatics, and we're writing this down, is going to be knowing when to use certain kinds of language in certain situations. Okay, so this is knowing, like, that kind of that read the room and know what you're talking about, or like what you should be talking about. So this is pragmatics. So you know how to, writing this down as well, how to greet, when to greet informally or formally, when to, like, the back and forth of conversation, when to stop, when to interrupt, when is it okay to ask a question, right? So that's pragmatics. Now, you need to know and write this down, is a lot of children with developmental delays, like socially, such as children with autism, they have a really hard times with pragmatics, right? Like being able to read the room, the tone of the conversation, how much space is needed between conversations. That is all pragmatics. So it's kind of like the social way of communicating with one another. Okay. So that's pragmatics, really essential. So it's kind of like, it's always great to understand this so that when you are dealing with somebody that probably has not developed pragmatics, just to, model the proper way of conversating instead of shaming them and being like, oh, you can't be doing that, just teaching them more directly. All right. So now we're going to go into the development of language. So the way that we develop language, and everybody is pretty much the same when it comes to language. It's just different languages, but the way that we develop is all the same. Okay, so we start off with the first one, which is receptive language. Okay, and this is the next thing I keep on saying after all of these, is basically your bullet format. Okay, and receptive language starts at about 4 months, in which the baby, this is for babies, at 4 months, they could already recognize the difference in speech sounds. Okay, as well as they can match the sounds, like who's speaking, with the face by 4 months. Okay. They've also said there's still like this research that babies are basically born with this receptive language that they are ready to take in, and ready to communicate. Okay. That we're wired for communication and language. So this is why you start seeing babies like making sounds, right? And maybe slowly like imitating the sounds that they start hearing. So by 7 months with receptive, as well, you're adding this, they can, they're able to segment the spoken sounds into individual words. Like they can actually decipher, it's not like they can count it, but they can know, the different words that are being said. Not with the meaning, but that there's, it's chopped up, basically. How they know this, I'm not quite sure. I'm pretty sure that there's some research out there with this stuff, but it's pretty cool, because there's a lot of research on babies and how they're able to process a lot more, even when they're in the womb. Like when there's the research of that the babies can, once they're born, they could even distinguish who the mother or a stranger is. Like they will distinguish between like their caregivers, once they're born, then from everybody else. So pretty cool, how that works. All right, next stage is going to be babbling stage. This starts at 4 months, one of my favorite. And this is when they start spontaneous, we're writing this down, that they are spontaneous vocalizing different sounds, right? So they'll start making these weird noises. A lot of them, they actually have nothing to do with language. They're just sounds that they're trying to work on the muscles, right? All of these muscles for language, for to be able to speak. And then it's just testing out and discovering and creating these schemas for the sounds. Okay. And then by 10 months, it starts sounding like their home language. Like this is why you see people, that maybe they're from England and you hear their accent, but in actuality, we all have that accent starting at already 10 months. Now, if they're not exposed to other alternative language, they lose the ability, to make and hear phonemes of other language. So this is a good time to, if you're bilingual, right, to expose the babies to two languages, even three, if that is what, you speak at home. Okay? And then we move on to the one word stage. And one word stage starts about 1 to 2 years old, and it's exactly what it means. They literally start saying one word, one single word, but it has a lot of meaning. So make sure to write that down. So it starts about 1 to 2 years old. They literally speak one word, not just one word, but just they speak in one word. And then that one word, carries a lot more meaning. Okay. They also start repeating, a lot of sounds, a lot of words that is around them, as well as pictures. Okay, this is where typically they'll start, if they learn one word, they kind of associate it with a whole lot of other stuff. And they're often nouns. Okay, so make sure you have that. And then one word can actually be a sentence. Okay, so for example, like go, right? And like go is, like, I want to go to the car, I need to go to the bathroom, I need, go to the kitchen. So one word can become a sentence that means multiple things. So make sure you have all of that I just said, so I don't have to keep on saying, write that down. Okay, then we move on to two word stages, and this is about 2 to 3 years old. And this is exactly what it says. They start using 2 to 3 words per sentence, right? They start making these longer, statements. And it tends to be very much like a noun and a verb, right? Like want milk or want juice or want outside. Okay, so it tends to be, you know, the noun and the verb. However, really interesting fact is it always follows syntax rules, like the grammar, it's always grammatically correct. And there's a lot of research behind that. Some people say it's modeling. Other times, other people will talk about that, the different theories. Other ones say that it's just because we're wired that way. So really cool. Now, under two and word stages, we get, I kind of want you to write here at around age 6 through 10 years old, they should be speaking in full sentences. Okay, and then here they typically already know like syllables and the patterns and grammar and all that other stuff. Okay, and then we get to this critical period, and we'll talk a little bit more on another stage about critical period because we as humans, we don't really have a lot of critical periods in the sense of when we should learn something. Like we could always learn anything at any given time. However, with language, it is the only one as of now that we have a critical period, which means that if a child hasn't been exposed to any language by the age of 7, they will not be able to master language. So make sure to write that down. By the age of 7 years old, and some are even saying like 9 years old, but about 7 years old, this, if a child has never ever been exposed, that literally means like they're closed in a closet and they've never really seen another person. They don't talk, like they don't talk, they see nobody interacting with each other. Um, this would be what would be considered critical period, and they will never be able to master language. Okay, now that does not mean they cannot learn language. They just will never be able to master it. So, an example was, and this is how we know about this, because obviously we cannot do a research on language and like restricting a human up to 7 years old knowing that they will not be able to master it. So what they learned was there was this child, and I think I've talked to you guys about it, about her before. Her name was Jeannie, and her parents basically had locked her up in a closet for, excuse me, I have a neighbor that, super inconsiderate. This is what he does all the time. Anyway, maybe you heard it, maybe you didn't, but it was a car really, really loud. Okay, so anyway, so basically the little girl, her parents locked her up in a closet, never interacted with anybody, never talked to anybody. Parents just basically, just left her in the closet. And so she was never exposed to language. What they found out from this is that they found her when she was about 12 years old. They did teach her language. She was able to speak, but she never was able to master this. So from that case study, basically, they were able to, and along with other studies as well, that they were able to determine that after about 7 years old, if no exposure to language, you will not be able to master it. Now, by the time you get to 9 years old, so the age of 9, to learn another language, it becomes extremely, extremely difficult. That's why it's always good if you have a small child to speak to them with another language. All right, so I'm going to stop there because we know we like them nice and short, and there will be another one, but it will be short as well. All right, guys. I will see you in the second one.